Hi, folks. Welcome to another of our daily devotions. Apologies for not having a devotional up on Monday. Just the busyness of the weekend and the beginning of the week meant I wasn't able to do that. But this morning we're going to bring our meditations on Psalm 10 to a close. We're going to be thinking about the request that the psalmist actually makes in this psalm. You notice that his request doesn't actually come until verse 13. That's almost two-thirds the way through his prayer. Now, that in and of itself is interesting, and it's also instructive. It shows us that there are times when we should spend a good proportion of our time in prayer reflecting before God and thinking about and praising God for his provision to us and his dealings with us in the past, and also the way in which he has previously answered our prayers. Sometimes we are very quick to go straight to God asking what we want. And we do that in such a way that there's little in our prayer by way of reflection, adoration, or thanksgiving. In verse 13 of this psalm, David tells God how things are with him at that time. He is being afflicted by his enemies. He doesn't go into any great detail about what is actually happening to him, what his circumstances look like. It's enough for him to simply make his circumstances known to God in general terms. And given the fact that his enemies were out to get him, David looks to the Lord and he asks, "Be gracious to me, O Lord." No doubt David wanted God to deliver him, and that was part and parcel of what he meant when he said, "Be gracious to me." But even such a deliverance was not something that David could say he deserved. David wasn't such a perfect man, such a perfect king, that he deserved to be rescued from his enemies. So David appeals to God's gracious character. This was one of the characteristics that God had revealed about himself to Moses. You remember whenever Moses in Exodus 34 asked to see God's glory, that the Lord hid him in the cleft of a rock and he passed by him, and Moses only saw his back. But it says in verse 6 of Exodus 34, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God. This is a wonderful aspect of God's character upon which to reflect. Our God is gracious, and in his grace he shows love and compassion to us who certainly do not deserve to be treated so kindly. David asks God to be gracious to him. Yes, he wanted God to deliver him, but God can also show grace by not giving us deliverance from particular circumstances. You remember the Apostle Paul. He went to God and he prayed 3 times earnestly that God would take away the thorn in the flesh. We don't know what that was, and we don't need to know what it was, but obviously it was something that concerned Paul greatly. And he went to God again and again and again, and God said, "No, my grace is sufficient for you." God was going to be gracious to him, not in taking away the affliction, but in giving him all the strength and help and comfort and encouragement he needed to bear with that affliction. David also in this psalm describes God as the one who lifts me up from the gates of death, or to put it in simple language, the God who saves me. Again, David remembers God's deliverances in the past, and these are part of the grounds of his present hope and his present assurance. What God has done in the past, says to David, he will do for me now. And why does David want to experience grace and deliverance? Well, he wants to experience grace and deliverance so that he would be able to tell others about how God had dealt so graciously and savingly with him, and that David would be able to exalt God as he rejoiced in God's salvation, that is, in God's deliverance. I wonder, brethren, are we quick to speak to others of the wonderful ways in which God comes to us and ministers to us and delivers us whenever we find ourselves in testing and difficult and hard circumstances in life? Are we, in the aftermath of God coming to us and ministering to us, are we quick to testify to others of how good God has been to us, of the wonderful deliverance that he has granted to us? And of course, the greatest deliverance is deliverance from our sins, that wonderful salvation that we know. Brethren, let us be quick, and let us be all the more determined to bear testimony to our family, our friends, our workmates, our neighbours, whoever, of the graciousness of our God towards us, and indeed towards sinners, that we, like David, may recount all his praises and rejoice in his salvation. Let's do that. Have a great day.